Jake Morrison sat in his chair at the Earth Defense Monitoring Station, drinking his third cup of coffee that night. The screens around him showed the empty darkness of space near Jupiter. Nothing ever happened during his shift. Most nights, he watched old movies on his tablet while the computers did all the work. Tonight was different. The alarm started beeping at exactly 11:47 p.m. Jake nearly spilled his coffee as he looked at the main screen. A massive object had appeared on the edge of his sensors. It was huge, bigger than anything he had ever seen before. "Computer, identify the object," Jake said, his hands shaking as he typed commands. The computer worked for several seconds before displaying the results. Jake's face went pale. The object was a Draconian warship, and not just any warship. This was one of their biggest and most dangerous ships. The computer showed it was over 2 miles long and armed with enough weapons to destroy entire planets. Jake grabbed the emergency phone. "This is Monitoring Station Alpha 7. We have a Draconian Imperial warship entering the Sol system. I repeat, we have a Draconian warship approaching Earth space." The voice on the other end was calm but serious. "Copy that, Alpha 7. We're sending Admiral Carter the information. Keep tracking and report any changes." Jake watched his screens as the massive ship moved through space. The Draconians were lizard-like aliens who ruled a huge part of the galaxy. Their ships were known for being nearly impossible to destroy. This one was called the Vorthax Fang, according to the computer's database. Why would they come here? Jake wondered out loud. Earth had signed a peace treaty with the Draconians 5 years ago. Both sides agreed to stay away from each other's space unless invited. The ship was moving slowly but steadily toward the inner solar system. Jake could see from his readings that it carried over 3,000 crew members. All of them were probably trained warriors. The Draconians didn't send ships anywhere without being ready for a fight. Jake's phone rang. It was Admiral Carter herself. "Morrison, what's the situation?" she asked. "The ship is maintaining course toward Earth, Admiral. Speed is steady, no weapons powered up that I can detect. But, ma'am, this thing could blow up our entire fleet without breaking a sweat." "I know, son. We're trying to contact them on all channels. Have they responded to any of our signals?" Jake checked his communication board. "No, ma'am. Complete radio." Silence. For the next 2 hours, Jake watched the ship get closer. Other monitoring stations had picked it up now, and the entire Earth Defense Force was on high alert. Fighter squadrons were launching from stations around the solar system, though everyone knew they couldn't do much against a Draconian warship. The ship passed Mars without slowing down. It moved past the asteroid belt like it owned the place. Jake started to sweat. If the Draconians wanted to attack Earth, there wasn't much anyone could do to stop them. "Admiral," Jake called again. "The ship is now passing Jupiter's orbit. Still no response to our signals." "Keep watching, Morrison. Something doesn't feel right about this," Jake agreed. Draconian ships usually announce themselves when entering other species' space. They were proud warriors who liked everyone to know they were coming. This silent approach was very strange. At 2:15 a.m., everything changed. Jake was watching the ship move past Jupiter when his screens suddenly went crazy. Every alarm in the station started ringing at once. The massive warship, which had been clearly visible on all sensors, simply vanished. "What the hell?" Jake said, checking his equipment. He ran full diagnostics on all his sensors. Everything was working perfectly. "Admiral Carter, this is Morrison. The Draconian ship just disappeared." "What do you mean, disappeared?" "I mean, it's gone, ma'am. One second it was there, the next second it wasn't. No explosion, no energy burst, no debris field. It just stopped existing." There was silence on the phone for a long moment. Run a full scan of the area where you last saw it. Jake did as ordered. His most powerful sensors found nothing. No metal fragments, no energy readings, no life signs. It was as if the ship had never been there at all. Morrison, are you certain your equipment is working? Yes, ma'am. I've run every test I can think of. Plus, monitoring stations Beta 3 and Gamma 1 both confirm. They saw the same thing I did. The ship vanished right at coordinates 23.7 by 45.2, just past Jupiter's orbit. Admiral Carter was quiet again. Jake could hear her talking to other people in the background. When she came back on the line, her voice was worried. Morrison, I want you to scan that area every 10 minutes for the rest of your shift. If so much as a piece of space dust shows up, I want to know about it immediately. Yes, ma'am. Jake spent the rest of the night staring at empty space. He drank more coffee and ran scan after scan, but found nothing. The Draconian Warship was gone as completely as if it had never existed. When his replacement arrived at 6 a.m., Jake was exhausted and confused. How does a ship that big just disappear? Draconian technology was advanced, but not magical. Ships couldn't just turn invisible or teleport away. As Jake drove home through the morning traffic, he couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. The Draconians were going to be very angry when they found out one of their most powerful warships had vanished near Earth. They would probably blame humans for what happened, even though Earth's technology couldn't scratch the paint on a Draconian ship. Jake had a bad feeling that this was just the beginning of something much worse. The galaxy was about to become a very dangerous place for humans, and nobody knew why that ship had disappeared. 3,000 Draconian warriors and the most advanced warship in their fleet were somewhere out there, or maybe nowhere at all. Either way, someone was going to have to answer for what happened, and Jake was pretty sure the Draconians weren't going to like the answers they got. 3 weeks after the Vorthax Fang disappeared, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was called to order. The great hall on the neutral world of Kepler Prime buzzed with tension as representatives from dozens of species took their seats. Admiral Lisa Carter walked through the massive doors, feeling very small. The hall was built for aliens much larger than humans. The ceiling stretched up so high she couldn't see the top. Around her, creatures that looked like walking trees, floating gas clouds, and giant insects whispered in languages she couldn't understand. Lisa had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 2 years, but she had never seen the other species this worried. Usually the meetings were boring discussions about trade routes and mining rights. Today felt different. Today felt dangerous. At the center of the hall stood War Commander Thextal of the Draconian Empire. He was 12 feet tall and covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. His yellow eyes burned with anger as he watched Lisa take her seat in the human section. "The emergency session will now begin," announced the council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like creature called a Nethric. "War Commander Thextal has requested this meeting to address the disappearance of the Imperial warship Vorthax Fang." Thextal stepped forward, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. When he spoke, his voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. "Honored council members, 3 weeks ago, the pride of our Imperial Navy vanished without a trace. The Vorthax Fang, carrying 3,000 of our finest warriors, disappeared while conducting a routine patrol near the primitive world called Earth." Lisa felt every eye in the hall turn toward her. She kept her face calm, but her heart was racing. "We demand answers," Thextal continued. "How does a ship capable of destroying entire fleets simply vanish? The humans claim they know nothing, but we find this difficult to believe." Lisa stood up slowly. The hall was so quiet she could hear her own breathing. "Honored War Commander, Earth had nothing to do with your ship's disappearance. Our monitoring stations tracked the Vorthax Fang as it entered our solar system, but we made no hostile moves. The ship vanished on its own." Thextal's laugh was like breaking glass. "Your primitive sensors could barely detect our ship, yet you claim to know what happened to it? We think the humans have developed secret weapons. Weapons that violate the Galactic Arms Treaty." Murmurs spread through the hall. The other species were clearly worried. If humans had weapons that could destroy Draconian ships without leaving, any evidence, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? The representative from the Hivari, an insect species with 4 arms and compound eyes, clicked his mandibles nervously. If the humans possess such technology, why have they not used it before? They are one of the weakest species in the Council. Perhaps they were waiting for the right moment, suggested the crystalline Velnari ambassador, her voice like singing crystal. Perhaps they planned to eliminate the strongest military force in the galaxy first. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest. That's ridiculous. Earth doesn't have weapons capable of harming Draconian ships. Our most powerful weapons are like throwing rocks at a mountain compared to your technology. Then explain what happened to our ship, Thextal demanded. 3,000 warriors do not simply disappear into empty space. Someone destroyed them, and Earth is the only world in that region of space. The council speaker floated higher above the assembly. What evidence do you have of human involvement, War Commander? Thextal activated a holographic display that showed the last known position of his ship. The Vorthax Fang was here, just past the 4th planet in the human system. Suddenly, all contact was lost. No distress signal, no explosion, no debris. This suggests advanced technology that most species in this galaxy do not possess. Or, Lisa said firmly, it suggests something we don't understand yet. The universe is full of mysteries we haven't solved. Maybe your ship encountered some kind of natural phenomenon. Natural phenomena do not selectively target Imperial warships, Thextal growled. The Netheric Council speaker pulsed with different colors as it thought. What does Earth propose we do to resolve this situation? Lisa had been dreading this question. We're willing to allow a joint investigation team to examine the area where your ship disappeared. We'll share all our sensor data and cooperate, fully with any reasonable inquiry. Reasonable. Thextal stepped closer to the human section. You will allow Draconian investigators full access to your military installations. You will open your research facilities for inspection. You will prove your innocence or face the consequences. The threat was clear. If Earth didn't cooperate, the Draconian Empire would consider it an act of war. Lisa knew that Earth's entire fleet couldn't stop even one Draconian battle group. We'll cooperate with the investigation, Lisa said carefully, but we won't allow unlimited access to our sovereign territory. We have rights under the Galactic Charter. Rights? Thextal laughed again. What rights do war criminals have? Your species may have murdered 3,000 of our people. The hall erupted in arguments. Some species supported the Draconians, afraid of what might happen if they didn't. Others suggested caution, worried about the precedent of forcing a council member to open all their facilities for inspection. The crystalline Velnari ambassador spoke up. Perhaps we should consider that there might be other explanations. The galaxy is vast, and we encounter new phenomena regularly. Such as? Thextal asked. Spatial anomalies, dimensional rifts, unknown technologies from extinct civilizations. The humans are primitive, but that doesn't necessarily make them guilty. Lisa felt grateful for the support, even though she knew the Velnari were probably just worried about what would happen if the Draconians could force investigations on any species they wanted. The Hivari representative buzzed nervously. If we allow this investigation, what happens when it's finished? If the humans are innocent, will the Draconians accept the results? If they are truly innocent, Thextal said, then we will know it. But if they are hiding something, we will find it. And if they are responsible for the destruction of the Vorthax Fang, there will be consequences. The council speaker pulsed bright red. The council will vote on establishing a joint investigation team. All in favor? Lisa watched as species after species voted yes. Even Earth's few allies couldn't risk opposing the Draconians on this issue. The vote was almost unanimous. The investigation team will consist of representatives from the Draconian Empire, Earth, and 3 neutral species, the speaker announced. They will have 30 days to determine what happened to the Vorthax Fang. As the session ended, Lisa felt the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. Earth had 30 days to prove its innocence in a crime it didn't commit. If they failed, humanity might face the full wrath of the most powerful military force in known space. She just hoped that somewhere out there, someone could figure out what really happened to that ship. Dr. Ben Taylor had never wanted to be part of anything this important. He was a xenoarchaeologist who preferred digging through ancient alien ruins to dealing with galactic politics. But when Admiral Carter asked him to join the investigation team, he couldn't say no. Ben stood on the bridge of the research vessel Star Seeker, watching Jupiter grow larger on the main screen. Next to him stood Subcommander Velthara, the Draconian intelligence officer assigned to the investigation. She was smaller than the war commander who had spoken at the council, but still over 8 feet tall with dark blue scales and intelligent, golden eyes. "So, Dr. Taylor," Velthara said, her English perfect despite her reptilian vocal cords, "tell me how a primitive species like humanity plans to solve a mystery that our advanced sensors cannot." Ben sighed. He had been dealing with Velthara's insults for 3 days now. "Maybe that's exactly why we'll solve it. Sometimes being primitive means you notice things that advanced technology misses." Velthara made a sound that might have been laughter. "An interesting theory. We shall see." The Star Seeker reached the coordinates where the Vorthax Fang had disappeared. Captain Rodriguez, a quiet woman who had commanded research ships for 15 years, ordered all sensors to begin detailed scans of the area. "I'm picking up some unusual gravitational readings," reported Lieutenant Kevin Burke from the science station. "Very faint, but definitely not normal for this region of space." Velthara moved to look at the readings. "Our sensors did not detect these anomalies." "That's because you weren't looking for them," Ben said. "Your sensors are designed to find ships, weapons, and life signs. Ours are built to find tiny differences in space that might indicate ancient civilizations or archaeological sites." For the first time since they had met, Velthara looked genuinely interested. "What do these readings suggest?" Ben studied the data for several minutes. "Something very heavy was here recently, heavy enough to bend space-time slightly. But it's not here anymore." "The Vorthax Fang was indeed heavy," Velthara said, "but ships do not leave gravitational echoes when they move." "No, they don't," Ben agreed. "This is something else, something that doesn't follow normal physics." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Amy Rodriguez was having the worst day of her life. She ran a small auto repair shop in the Nevada desert, far from any major cities. She liked the quiet life, fixing old cars and trucks for the few people who lived in the area. But this morning, old Pete Williams had brought her something that wasn't a car. "Found this crashed in the desert about 5 miles from my ranch," Pete said, pointing to the twisted metal in the back of his pickup truck. "Thought you might know what it is." Amy looked at the fragments. They were like nothing she had ever seen. The metal seemed to shift color as she watched it, going from silver to blue to green and back again. When she touched it, it felt warm, almost alive. "Pete, where exactly did you find this?" "Near Devil's Rock, out past the old mining road. There was a big crater there, like something had hit the ground real hard. But this is all I could find." Amy picked up one of the larger pieces. It was heavier than it looked, and she could swear it vibrated slightly in her hands. "I think you should call the sheriff, Pete. This isn't from any car or truck I've ever seen." "Already did. Sheriff Martinez said he'd send someone out tomorrow, but I was hoping you might have some idea what it is." Amy shook her head. "Sorry, Pete. This is way beyond anything I know about." After Pete left, Amy couldn't stop thinking about the strange metal. She had always been curious about how things worked. That's why she became a mechanic in the first place. But this stuff didn't work like anything she understood. She decided to take one small piece back to her workshop to examine it more closely. Under her work lights, the metal seemed to pulse with its own inner light. When she put it under her microscope, she saw patterns that looked almost like circuit boards, but far more complex than anything humans could build. Back in space, the investigation team was making slow progress. They had found more gravitational anomalies and some traces of exotic particles that didn't match anything in known databases. "Dr. Taylor," Captain Rodriguez called from the bridge. "We're receiving a priority message from Earth Defense Command." Ben and Velthara hurried to the communications station. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen, looking worried. "Ben, we may have found something related to your investigation. A woman in Nevada discovered some unusual metal fragments with properties that don't match any known materials. I'm sending you the initial analysis." Ben read through the data quickly. The metal seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, which should have been impossible. Its atomic structure shifted constantly, and it emitted energy signatures that matched some of the exotic particles they had found in space. "Velthara, look at this," Ben said, showing her the report. The Draconian officer studied the information carefully. "This is disturbing. These properties suggest technology far beyond what any known species possesses." "Including yours?" Ben asked. "Especially ours. We pride ourselves on understanding the physical laws of the universe. This material appears to ignore those laws." Captain Rodriguez spoke up from the navigation station. "Dr. Taylor, I think you should see this. We've been mapping the gravitational anomalies and they form a pattern." Ben looked at the three-dimensional display showing all the unusual readings they had detected. The anomalies weren't random. They formed a perfect geometric shape, like a doorway made of bent space-time. "That's not natural," Velthara said quietly. "No, it's not," Ben agreed. "Someone or something opened a hole in space right here. The question is what went through it." Velthara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was troubled. "Dr. Taylor, I must ask you something. Is it possible that humans have been lying about their technological capabilities?" Ben met her golden eyes steadily. "Sub-Commander, I've spent my career studying the remains of civilizations that built technology we can barely understand. If humans had access to that kind of power, do you really think we'd be living on just one planet and struggling to build ships that can reach the next star system? Velthara considered this. No, I suppose not. Which means something else happened here. Something that neither humans nor Draconians understand. The investigation team spent the rest of the day collecting more data and running simulations. Every test confirmed what they had already discovered. Something had opened a hole in space-time large enough for a massive starship to pass through. But what had created that hole? And where did it lead? As Ben prepared his report for Admiral Carter, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than a missing ship. The metal fragments on Earth and the gravitational anomalies in space suggested that forces beyond their understanding were at work, and if those forces could make a Draconian warship disappear without a trace, what else might they be capable of? Amy Rodriguez stared at the small piece of strange metal on her workbench. She had been studying it for 3 days now, and it kept doing impossible things. When she left it alone, it would slowly change shape. When she touched it, it grew warm and seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. But the strangest thing happened when she brought it near her old radio. The metal had started vibrating, and suddenly the radio picked up signals from somewhere far away. The voices spoke in languages she didn't recognize, but underneath the alien words, she could hear something that sounded like screaming. "This is crazy," Amy muttered to herself. She had always been good with machines, but this was beyond anything she could understand. Her phone rang, making her jump. Rodriguez Auto Repair. Ms. Rodriguez? This is Agent Danny Foster from the Department of Defense. We understand you found some unusual metal fragments. Amy's heart started racing. Who told you that? Sheriff Martinez filed a report. We'd like to come take a look, if that's okay with you. Amy looked at the metal piece. Something told her not to let the government take it away. I'm sorry, but I already gave everything to a scientist friend of mine. Nothing left here. There was silence on the phone. Ms. Rodriguez, this is a matter of national security. We really need to examine those fragments. Like I said, they're already gone. Amy hung up quickly. She knew she had just lied to the federal government, but something about that metal felt important, like it was trying to tell her something she needed to understand. Amy decided to take the fragment to the place where Pete had found it. Maybe there were more pieces, or maybe she could figure out what had really happened out there. Meanwhile, in space, Dr. Ben Taylor was making his own disturbing discoveries. The investigation team had been studying the gravitational anomalies for a week, and the results were getting stranger every day. Velthara, come look at this, Ben called from his workstation. The Draconian officer moved across the small laboratory. They had set up on the Starseeker. Over the past few days, she had stopped treating Ben like a primitive human and started respecting his expertise. What have you found? She asked. Ben pointed to a complex display showing energy patterns. These readings don't match anything in our databases, but they're similar to legends I've studied from ancient human civilizations. Legends? Stories about sky serpents being swallowed by hungry voids. I always thought they were just myths. But look at this. Ben brought up another screen showing cave paintings from sites around Earth. These drawings are thousands of years old, but they show the same energy patterns we're detecting here. Velthara studied the images carefully. You believe ancient humans encountered this phenomenon before? I think ancient humans encountered a lot of things they couldn't explain. But this suggests that whatever happened to your ship has been happening for a very long time. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom. "Dr. Taylor, Sub-Commander Velthara, please report to the bridge. We found something." They hurried to the bridge, where the main screen showed a detailed scan of the area around Jupiter. But now there was something new in the display, something that hadn't been there before. "What are we looking at?" Ben asked. "Deep space radar picked up a structure buried in one of Jupiter's moons," Lieutenant Burke reported. "It's artificial, definitely not natural, and it's been there for a very long time." Velthara leaned forward to study the readings. "How long?" "Based on the rock formation around it, at least 10,000 years, maybe longer." Ben felt his excitement growing. "Can we get closer?" "We're already heading there," Captain Rodriguez said. "Admiral Carter wants us to investigate immediately." 2 hours later, they were in orbit around Europa, one of Jupiter's largest moons. The structure was buried deep under the ice, but their sensors could map its outline clearly. "It's huge," Burke said in amazement. "At least a mile across, and it goes down further than our sensors can reach." "What's it made of?" Ben asked. "That's the weird part. It's the same material as those fragments they found on Earth. The stuff that changes properties when you're not looking at it." Velthara turned to Ben. "Dr. Taylor, if this structure is 10,000 years old, it predates both human and draconian space travel by thousands of years. Which means," Ben said slowly, "either someone else built it or humans were once more advanced than they are now," Velthara finished. Back on Earth, Amy had driven out to Devil's Rock with her metal detector and a backpack full of tools. The crater where Pete had found the fragments was bigger than she had expected, almost 50 feet across and perfectly circular. Amy started her metal detector and began walking around the edge of the crater. For the first hour, she found nothing but ordinary desert rocks. But as she moved closer to the center, her detector started going crazy. She dug where the signal was strongest and found more of the strange metal. But these pieces were different. They seemed to be parts of some kind of machine, with intricate designs carved into their surfaces. As Amy collected the fragments, she noticed something else. The crater wasn't just a hole in the ground. There were markings around the edges, symbols that looked like they had been burned into the rock. Amy took pictures of everything with her phone, then gathered as many fragments as she could carry. Back at her shop, she laid them out on her workbench and tried to figure out how they fit together. After several hours of careful work, she had assembled what looked like part of a control panel. The symbols on it were unlike anything she had ever seen, but somehow they seemed familiar, like she should know what they meant. When Amy touched the assembled panel, it came to life. Lights began pulsing under the surface, and suddenly her workshop was filled with holographic displays showing star maps and technical diagrams. Amy stumbled backward, knocking over her coffee cup. The displays flickered and stabilized, showing what looked like Earth's solar system. But there were differences. Extra planets that didn't exist anymore and structures around the sun that looked like massive space stations. A voice spoke from the panel in perfect English. "Emergency protocols activated. Dimensional anchor system compromised. Warning, Void Hunter breach detected." Amy stared at the display in shock. "What are you?" "I am the Guardian interface for Earth's dimensional defense grid," the voice replied. "You have been selected as the new primary operator." "Selected? By who?" "By genetic compatibility with the original human civilization that built this system 12,000 years ago." Amy felt dizzy. "That's impossible. Humans 12,000 years ago lived in caves." Some humans lived in caves, the voice corrected. Others built starships and fought wars across dimensions. You are descended from the survivors who chose to hide on this world after the Great Defeat. The holographic display changed, showing battles between human ships and creatures that seemed to be made of living darkness. Amy watched in horror as entire fleets were swallowed by holes in space. We called them the Void Hunters, the voice continued. They exist partially outside normal reality, and they consume entire civilizations. Earth's ancestors built this defense system to keep them away. And it's been working for 12,000 years? Amy asked. Until 3 weeks ago, when a Draconian Warship triggered the automated defenses and opened a breach in the dimensional barrier. The Void Hunters are returning, and Earth's children must decide whether to fight or hide once again. Amy looked around her small auto repair shop, trying to process what she was hearing. According to this machine, she was supposedly the descendant of an advanced human civilization, and alien monsters were about to invade reality itself. "This is insane," she said out loud. "Perhaps," the voice agreed. "But insane or not, you are now Earth's primary defense against forces that your modern civilization cannot even comprehend. The question is, will you accept this responsibility?" Amy stared at the alien control panel that had just turned her quiet life upside down. In the distance, she could hear the sound of helicopters approaching. The government agents had probably figured out where she lived. She had about 30 seconds to decide whether to trust a voice from an impossible machine or surrender the fragments to people who would probably lock them away in a warehouse somewhere. Amy touched the panel again. "If I say yes, what happens?" "Then you become the bridge between your current civilization and the one that came before, and you help prepare Earth for a war that began 12,000 years ago." The helicopters were getting closer. Amy could see their lights through her workshop windows. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'm in." The panel pulsed with bright light, and suddenly Amy's mind was filled with knowledge she had never learned and memories that weren't her own. She understood now what the strange metal really was, and why the Draconian ship had vanished, and she knew that time was running out for everyone in the galaxy. 3 days after Amy's transmission, the largest gathering of military forces in human history was assembling near Earth. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense flagship Unity, watching as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. But these weren't just human vessels. For the first time ever, Draconian Imperial warships were flying in formation with Earth's fleet. The sight should have been terrifying, but Lisa felt oddly reassured. If they were going to face creatures from another dimension, they would need all the help they could get. "Admiral," reported Commander Steve Martinez from the communications station, "War Commander Thextal is requesting permission to come aboard." Lisa nodded. "Grant permission, and have Dr. Taylor and Miss Rodriguez report to the briefing room." 20 minutes later, Lisa found herself in the strangest meeting of her career. Around the conference table sat a 12-foot-tall Draconian war commander, a human xenoarchaeologist, and a small-town mechanic who claimed to speak for an ancient human civilization. "Miss Rodriguez," Thextal said, his voice carefully controlled. "My intelligence officers find your story difficult to believe. However, our deep scans of the Europa facility confirm that it contains technology beyond our current understanding." Amy looked tiny next to the massive alien, but she didn't back down. "War Commander, I understand your skepticism, but your people are running out of time. Every hour they spend in the void dimension makes the breach stronger. Show him." Ben urged. "Show him what the Guardian showed you." Amy activated a small device she had brought from the underground facility. The briefing room filled with holographic displays showing the interior of the Vorthax Fang. The trapped Draconian crew members were clearly visible, but now there were more of the dark creatures moving between them. Thextal leaned forward, studying the images intently. "That is definitely my ship, and those are my warriors. But what are those shadow beings doing to them?" "They're harvesting memories and genetic information," Amy explained. "The Void Hunters learn about their prey before they invade. They're studying your people to understand how to fight the rest of the galaxy." Admiral Carter spoke up. "What exactly are you proposing we do about it?" Amy manipulated the holographic controls, and the display changed to show a tactical map. "The Guardian has identified 17 active dimensional weak points around Earth. If we can coordinate our ships properly, we can force open a stable breach large enough for a rescue mission." "And what happens to the rescue team once they're in this void dimension?" Thextal asked. "That's the tricky part," Amy admitted. "Normal physics don't apply there. Ships can't rely on their usual sensors or weapons. We'll need to modify everything to work with dimensional technology." Ben had been studying the technical specifications Amy had provided. "This is beyond anything humanity can build. We don't have the manufacturing capabilities." "But we do," Thextal said thoughtfully. "Imperial foundries could adapt these designs given sufficient time and resources." Admiral Carter felt a headache coming on. "How much time are we talking about?" Amy checked her device. "The Guardian estimates we have 6 days before the breach becomes self-sustaining. After that, the Void Hunters won't need your ship anymore. They'll be able to send invasion forces directly into our reality." 6 days to build experimental ships and mount a rescue mission into an alien dimension, Lisa said flatly. "That's impossible." "Maybe not," Ben said slowly. "What if we don't build new ships? What if we modify existing ones?" Thextal's eyes lit up with understanding. "You're suggesting we combine human creativity with draconian engineering capabilities?" "Exactly. Your ships have the power and armor we need. Our people have experience adapting technology in ways that aren't supposed to work." Amy pulled up another display showing the ancient human facilities around Earth. "The Guardian can provide technical support from 43 locations. We can set up modification centers wherever your ships can land." Admiral Carter looked around the table. "This is insane. We're talking about trusting Earth's safety to technology we don't understand, in partnership with people who were our enemies last week." "Admiral," Thextal said formally, 3,000 of my people are trapped in that dimension. If there is any chance of saving them, I am willing to work with humans." "And if we don't try," Amy added, "everyone in the galaxy dies anyway when the Void Hunters invade." Lisa made the decision that would change galactic history. "Very well, we'll attempt this rescue mission, but I want safeguards in place. If this technology poses any threat to Earth, we shut it down immediately." "Agreed," Thextal said. "But I reserve the right to protect my people if humans prove treacherous." Amy stood up from the table. "Then we'd better get started. The Guardian is already activating modification facilities across Earth. Your ships can begin landing within the hour." Over the next 4 days, Earth became a hive of activity unlike anything in human history. Draconian heavy cruisers landed at sites in Nevada, Colorado, and Montana, where ancient human machinery emerged from underground bunkers. Captain Jake Morrison found himself commanding a joint human-Draconian crew aboard a modified patrol ship. Half his bridge officers were 7-foot-tall reptilian aliens who spoke in hisses and growls. but they worked together with surprising efficiency. "Human Morrison," said Sub-Commander Kextar, the Draconian tactical officer, "your species has unusual methods, but they are effective." Jake watched as human technicians welded alien technology onto the ship's hull. "We're good at making things work, even when they shouldn't. This dimensional shield generator should protect us from the worst effects of the void," reported Chief Petty Officer Nancy White, the ship's engineer. "But I've never seen anything like this power source. It's like it's drawing energy from empty space." "Dimensional tap," Kextar explained. "The ancients learned to pull power directly from the fabric of reality itself. Meanwhile, Amy Rodriguez was working 18-hour days, coordinating between the Guardian systems and the fleet modification teams. She had barely slept since the rescue mission began, sustained by coffee and the knowledge that billions of lives depended on their success. "Amy," Ben called from across the main control center they had set up in Nevada. "The modifications are almost complete, but we still need someone to guide the rescue ships once they're in the void dimension." "The Guardian can provide navigation data," Amy replied, not looking up from her displays. "Not the ships," Ben said. "You. The Guardian says you're the only one who can interface with both human and ancient technology simultaneously." Amy finally looked up from her work. "You're asking me to go into an alien dimension where reality doesn't work properly, in a ship that's held together with spare parts and hope." "I'm asking you to save 3,000 lives and prevent galactic invasion," Ben said quietly. Amy sighed and rubbed her tired eyes. "When you put it that way, how can I refuse?" On the morning of the 6th day, the rescue fleet assembled in Earth orbit. 12 ships had been modified with dimensional technology, crewed by volunteers from both species. Admiral Carter watched from the Unity as the strange vessels prepared for their impossible mission. "Fleet status report," she called. "All ships. Report ready," Commander Martinez replied. "Dimensional generators are online. Shield systems are active. The portal formation is holding position near Jupiter." Amy's voice came over the communication system from the lead rescue ship. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from the breach point. I think the Void Hunters know we're coming." "Can we still proceed?" Carter asked. "We have to," Amy replied. "If we wait any longer, the breach will be too strong to close." Thexatal's image appeared on the main screen. He was aboard one of the modified Draconian ships, his massive frame squeezed into a human-designed command chair. "Admiral Carter, whatever our species' differences, today we fight as allies." "Agreed, War Commander. Bring your people home." The rescue fleet moved toward Jupiter, where reality itself was beginning to tear apart. As they approached the breach point, space around them started to shimmer and twist. The laws of physics were breaking down. "All ships," Amy announced over the fleet channel. "We're entering the dimensional barrier in 30 seconds. Remember, once we're on the other side, trust your instruments, not your eyes. The void will try to confuse you." Jake Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair as his ship approached the swirling portal. Next to him, Kextar was running final checks on their weapons systems. "Human Morrison," the Draconian officer said quietly, "it has been an honor serving with your crew." "Same here, Kextar. Let's go get your people back." The rescue fleet plunged into the breach, leaving normal space behind. On the other side waited creatures that had been hungry for 12,000 years and 3,000 Draconian warriors whose rescue would determine the fate of the galaxy. Amy Rodriguez, small-town mechanic turned guardian of ancient secrets, led the way into a dimension where nightmares were real and hope was the only weapon that mattered. Amy Rodriguez sat in her workshop, staring at the glowing alien panel that had just changed everything she thought she knew about the world. The voice from the ancient machine had filled her mind with impossible memories, showing her glimpses of a human civilization that had once ruled the stars. Outside, she could hear military vehicles surrounding her building. The government agents weren't going to wait much longer for her to cooperate. "Guardian," Amy said to the panel, "if these void hunters are so dangerous, why haven't they already invaded?" "The dimensional barrier held for 12,000 years," the voice replied. "But when the Draconian Warship approached Earth, it triggered our automated defense systems. The ship was pulled into the void dimension to prevent it from discovering our hidden installations." So the Draconians were right. Earth is responsible for their missing ship. Indirectly, yes, but they do not understand the true danger. The breach created by transporting their vessel has destabilized the barrier. The Void Hunters now know where Earth is located. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. How long before they break through? Unknown. But the process has already begun. Each day, the barrier grows weaker. The sound of helicopters was getting louder. Amy knew she had to make a decision quickly. "What can I do to stop them?" "First, you must access the main control center. It is located beneath the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado. Second, you must convince Earth's military leaders that the threat is real. Third, you must work with the investigation team to rescue the Draconian crew before they become a permanent bridge for invasion." Amy laughed bitterly. "Great. So I need to break into a top-secret military base, convince world leaders that monsters from another dimension are real, and somehow rescue 3,000 alien warriors from a place that doesn't exist. No problem." "You will not be alone," the Guardian voice said. "Other installations around Earth are awakening. Descendants of the original human civilization are being contacted. The network that protected your world for millennia is coming back online." The workshop door suddenly exploded inward. Armed soldiers in black uniforms poured through the opening, their weapons trained on Amy. "Step away from the device," commanded a man in a suit who followed the soldiers. "My name is Agent Collins. You're interfering with national security." Amy raised her hand slowly, but kept one finger touching the alien panel. "Agent Collins, you have no idea what you're dealing with here. I know enough. We've detected massive energy emissions from this location. Whatever that thing is, it's coming with us. If you remove it from this location, you'll kill everyone on Earth," Amy said calmly. Agent Collins signaled to his men. "Secure the device and bring the woman." As the soldiers moved toward the panel, Amy pressed her palm firmly against its surface. "Guardian, emergency protocols." The workshop filled with blinding light. When it faded, the soldiers found themselves looking at empty air. Amy and the panel had vanished completely. They reappeared in a vast underground chamber carved from solid rock. Amy looked around in amazement at walls covered with the same shifting metal as the fragments she had found. Holographic displays showed star maps and weapon systems that made human technology look like stone tools. "Where are we?" Amy asked. "Facility 7, beneath the Nevada desert. One of 43 installations built by your ancestors. From here you can contact the investigation team and coordinate Earth's defense." Amy walked to what looked like a communications console. The controls seemed alien, but somehow she knew exactly how to use them. The knowledge the Guardian had given her was like having someone else's memories in her head. "Guardian, show me what happened to the Draconian ship." A three-dimensional display materialized in front of her, showing the Vorthax Fang being pulled through a tear in space. Amy watched in horror as the massive warship tumbled through a dimension filled with writhing darkness. "The ship and its crew are alive," the Guardian explained, "but they are trapped in temporal loops created by Void Hunter technology. The creatures use living beings as anchors to stabilize dimensional breaches. So the longer the Draconians stay there, the easier it becomes for these things to invade our reality?" "Correct. And the Void Hunters are already sending scouts through smaller rifts. Your investigation team has detected some of these incursions, though they do not yet understand what they are seeing." Meanwhile, in space near Jupiter, Dr. Ben Taylor was studying the most disturbing readings of his career. The buried structure on Europa was definitely artificial, but its energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic databases. "Sub-Commander Velthara," Ben called from his workstation. "These new scans show the structure is still active. It's been running continuously for thousands of years." Velthara joined him at the display. Over the past week, she had developed a grudging respect for human scientific methods. "What is its purpose?" "Near as I can tell, it's some kind of monitoring station. Like it's watching for something specific." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Taylor, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's on a frequency we've never seen before, and it's specifically asking for you." Ben and Velthara hurried to the communications station. The main screen showed a young woman in what looked like an underground facility. Behind her, holographic displays showed technical readouts that made Ben's head spin. "Dr. Taylor, my name is Amy Rodriguez. I'm calling from a facility built by an advanced human civilization that existed 12,000 years ago." Ben stared at the screen in shock. "That's impossible. Humans 12,000 years ago were just learning to farm." "Some humans were learning to farm," Amy corrected. "Others were fighting a war against creatures called Void Hunters. The Draconian ship you're looking for was pulled into their dimension to prevent it from discovering Earth's hidden defenses." Velthara stepped into view of the camera. "Who are you really? How do you know about our ship?" "I'm a mechanic from Nevada who found some pieces of your ancestors' technology," Amy replied. "And I'm probably the only person on Earth who can help you get your people back." The display behind Amy changed to show the interior of the Vorthax Fang. Ben could see Draconian warriors frozen in place, caught in some kind of time distortion field. "They're alive," Velthara said quietly. "But what are those creatures moving between them?" Ben looked closer at the image. Dark shapes like living shadows moved through the ship, studying the trapped crew members. "Amy, what are those things?" "Void Hunters. They exist partially outside normal space-time, which is why your sensors can't detect them properly. They're using your ship as an anchor point to break through into our dimension." "How do we get our people back?" Velthara demanded. "That's the complicated part," Amy said. "We need to mount a rescue mission into a dimension where the laws of physics don't work the same way, and we need to do it before the breach becomes permanent." Ben felt a chill as he realized what she was suggesting. "You're talking about sending ships into a place where reality itself might be unstable. I'm talking about the only way to save 3,000 Draconian lives and prevent an invasion that would destroy every civilization in the galaxy," Amy replied. "The question is, are you willing to risk everything to try?" Velthara was quiet for a long moment. Then she straightened to her full height and spoke with the authority of a military officer. "Dr. Taylor, I must contact my superiors immediately. If what this human says is true, the Empire needs to know." "And I need to contact Admiral Carter," Ben added. "This is way beyond what our investigation team can handle." Amy nodded. "Contact whoever you need to, but remember, every day we wait makes the breach stronger." Eventually, the Void Hunters won't need the Draconian ship as an anchor. They'll be able to invade on their own. The transmission ended, leaving Ben and Velthara staring at a blank screen. "Dr. Taylor," Velthara said slowly, "do you believe her story?" Ben thought about everything they had discovered over the past weeks. The gravitational anomalies, the ancient structure on Europa, the impossible metal fragments found on Earth. 3 weeks ago, I would have said she was crazy, Ben replied. But after what we've seen, I'm starting to think the craziest possibility might actually be the truth. Velthara activated her personal communicator. "This is Sub-Commander Velthara reporting to Imperial Command. Priority Alpha. I need to speak with the War Commander immediately." As she waited for the connection, she looked back at the readings from the Europa facility. If the humans were right about their hidden past, it meant the galaxy was facing a threat that made even the Draconian Empire look primitive. And if they were wrong, then everyone was about to waste precious time chasing shadows while the real enemy remained hidden. Either way, Velthara had a feeling that nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The rescue fleet emerged from the dimensional breach into a nightmare that defied description. Space itself seemed wrong here, twisted into impossible geometries that hurt to look at. Stars burned with colors that didn't exist in normal reality, and the darkness between them moved with hungry purpose. Amy Rodriguez fought down nausea as her modified ship, the Desert Rose, stabilized in the void dimension. Around her, the joint human-Draconian crew struggled to make sense of their instrument readings. "Navigator report," Amy called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Ma'am, our normal sensors are useless here," replied Lieutenant Chris Barnes, a young officer who had volunteered for the mission despite having a newborn daughter at home. "But the dimensional tracking system is picking up the Draconian ship about 2 kilometers ahead." On the main screen, the Vorthak's fang appeared through the shifting darkness. The massive warship looked intact, but it was surrounded by a web of dark energy that pulsed like a living thing. Shadowy creatures the size of fighter craft moved around the trapped vessel. "My God," whispered Chief Engineer Nancy White. "There are so many of them." Amy activated the fleet communications. "All ships, this is Desert Rose. Target acquired. Remember the plan. We create a distraction while the boarding teams extract the Draconian crew." Captain Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the radio from his ship, the New Hope. "Amy, we're seeing dozens of those shadow creatures. Are our weapons going to work on them?" "The ancient technology should disrupt their dimensional phasing," Amy replied, though she wasn't entirely certain. The Guardian had provided the weapon modifications, but they had never been tested in actual combat. War Commander Thextal's ship, the Iron Talon, moved into position alongside the human vessels. His voice boomed across the fleet channel. "Warriors, of both species, today we face an enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy. Fight with honor, and may our ancestors guide our weapons." The Void Hunters had noticed their arrival. The shadow creatures began moving toward the rescue fleet, their forms shifting and changing as they approached. Up close, Amy could see that. They weren't really solid at all, but seemed to be made of living darkness that existed partially outside normal space. "All ships, open fire," Amy commanded. The modified weapon systems came to life, sending streams of dimensional energy toward the approaching creatures. The beams looked different from normal ship weapons, crackling with power that seemed to bend space around them. When the energy struck the Void Hunters, the creatures shrieked with sounds that bypassed the ears and went straight to the mind. Several of them began to dissolve, their dark forms unraveling like smoke in a strong wind. "It's working!" shouted Lieutenant Barnes. "The weapons are effective." But for every creature they destroyed, two more seemed to emerge from the darkness around them. The Void Hunters moved in ways that ignored momentum and gravity, appearing suddenly at close range and forcing the rescue ships to scatter. "This is taking too long," Amy muttered, watching as more creatures poured toward them. "Dr. Taylor, are you ready with the boarding team?" Ben Taylor's voice came from the assault shuttle he was piloting. "Ready as we'll ever be. Just get us close to that ship." Amy turned to her helmsman, a grizzled Draconian pilot named Velnock, who had volunteered to fly with the human crew. "Can you get us through their line?" "Hold tight, small human," Velnock growled. "I will show you how the Imperial Navy flies." The Desert Rose dove toward the trapped Draconian warship, weaving between the attacking Void Hunters with impossible grace. The ancient human technology seemed to enhance the ship's maneuverability, allowing it to move in ways that should have torn the hull apart. Behind them, Jake Morrison and his crew were engaged in a running battle with a group of larger Void Hunters. These creatures were the size of small moons and moved like living storms through the twisted space. "Nancy, can we reroute more power to the weapons?" Jake called to his engineer. "I'm trying, but this dimensional generator is like nothing I've ever worked with," Nancy replied, her hands flying over unfamiliar controls. "Wait! I think I can tap into the ship's life support systems." "Do it! We need maximum firepower!" The New Hope's weapons blazed with increased intensity, carving through the larger Void Hunters like a sword through shadow. But the effort was draining the ship's power reserves faster than they could be replenished. Meanwhile, Ben Taylor and his boarding team had reached the Vorthax Fang. The assault shuttle attached itself to the warship's hull with magnetic clamps, and the team prepared to cut their way inside. "Amy, we're at the ship," Ben reported. "But there's something wrong with the hull. It's like it's partially phased out of normal reality." "The Guardian warned me about that," Amy replied, while dodging another group of attacking creatures. "Use the dimensional cutters. They should be able to penetrate phased matter." Ben activated the cutting tools they had brought from the ancient human facilities. The devices looked primitive compared to normal starship equipment, but they cut through the draconian hull like it was made of paper. The boarding team entered the ship to find themselves in a maze of temporal distortions. Draconian crew members were frozen in place, caught in time loops that repeated the same few seconds over and over again. "This is horrible," said Sergeant Maria Santos, the team's medical officer. "They're aware but can't move or speak. They've been trapped like this for weeks." Sub-Commander Velthara, who had insisted on joining the boarding team despite the risks, moved carefully through the distorted corridors. "These are my people. Tell me how to free them." Ben consulted the ancient human technology scanner he carried. "According to this, the temporal loops are maintained by nodes throughout the ship. If we can destroy them, the crew should be freed." "Then we destroy them," Velthara said simply. The boarding team split up, moving through the ship to locate the temporal nodes. Each device was guarded by smaller Void Hunters that had somehow gotten inside the vessel. The creatures moved through the ship's walls like they weren't there, attacking from unexpected directions. Outside, the space battle was intensifying. More Void Hunters were arriving from deeper in their dimension, and the rescue fleet was beginning to take damage. "Amy, we can't hold them much longer," Jake reported. His ship had taken several hits and was venting atmosphere. "How much more time do you need?" "Ben's team is making progress," Amy replied, though she was starting to worry. The Desert Roses Shields were down to 30%, and the Void Hunters seemed to be learning how to counter their weapons. Then Thextal's voice cut through the communication chatter. "All ships, concentrate fire on the largest creature. If we can destroy their commander, the others may retreat." Amy looked at the massive Void Hunter that dominated the battlefield. It was the size of a small asteroid and seemed to be directing the attacks of the smaller creatures. "All ships, focus on the big one," Amy ordered. "Everything we've got." The entire rescue fleet turned their weapons on the massive creature. Dimensional energy beams converged on its dark form, causing it to writhe and shriek in pain. But it was incredibly tough, absorbing damage that would have destroyed a dozen normal ships. Inside the Vorthak's fang, Ben's team had destroyed half the temporal nodes. As each one was eliminated, sections of the ship returned to normal time, and Draconian crew members began moving again. "Dr. Taylor," one of the freed warriors gasped, "what are those things? Where are we?" "You're in the void dimension," Ben explained quickly. "We're here to rescue you, but we need to move fast." Velthara had reached the ship's bridge, where she found the captain and senior officers trapped in their own temporal loop. She carefully destroyed the node that held them, and watched as Captain Zexmore stumbled back to awareness. "Sub-Commander Velthara," the captain said in confusion. "How did you get here? What happened to my ship?" "Explanations later, Captain. Right now, we need to evacuate your crew." Back in space, the combined firepower of the rescue fleet was finally having an effect on the massive Void Hunter. Cracks of light began appearing in its dark form, and its movements became more desperate. Amy saw their chance. "All ships, one final push. Everything you've got right now." The modified weapon systems overloaded as every ship poured maximum power into their attacks. The massive creature let out a psychic scream that could be felt across dimensions, then began to collapse in on itself. When it died, the other Void Hunters suddenly stopped their coordinated attacks and began fleeing back into the depths of their dimension. "Ben, how are you doing in there?" Amy called, almost finished. "We've got about 2,000 crew members evacuated to the shuttle bays. Just a few more sections to clear. Hurry! Without that big creature organizing them, the smaller ones are retreating. But I don't know how long that will last." 10 minutes later, the last of the Draconian crew had been freed from their temporal prisons. The massive warship was empty except for Ben's boarding team, who were setting charges to destroy the temporal nodes completely. "All teams, evacuate now," Amy ordered. "We're closing the breach in 60 seconds. The rescue shuttles pulled away from the Vorthak's fang just as the charges detonated. The temporal distortions collapsed, and the great warship began to fade back toward normal reality. "All ships, form up for dimensional transit," Amy called. "Time to go home." 6 months after the rescue mission, Amy Rodriguez stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council. The Great Hall on Kepler Prime had never seen anything like this before. A human mechanic from Nevada addressing representatives from across the galaxy about threats that most of them still didn't fully understand. But Amy wasn't the same person who had been fixing cars in the desert just half a year ago. The knowledge and memories from the ancient Guardian had changed her, giving her insights into technologies and dangers that spanned millennia. "Honored representatives," Amy began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. 6 months ago, most of you had never heard of the Void Hunters. Today you know that they represent the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced. In the audience, War Commander Thextal sat with his rescued officers. The massive Draconian had changed, too, during their ordeal. He no longer looked at humans as primitive creatures, but as allies who had proven themselves in the crucible of interdimensional warfare. Admiral Lisa Carter watched from the human delegation as Amy continued her presentation. Lisa had been promoted to overall commander of Earth's expanding fleet, a fleet that now included ships built with ancient human technology that made them the most advanced vessels in known space. The rescue mission proved that the Void Hunters can be fought and defeated, Amy said, gesturing to holographic displays that showed the battle in the Void dimension. But it also showed us how dangerous they are. They're not just another alien species. They're parasites that consume entire realities. Dr. Ben Taylor, now Earth's chief xenoarchaeologist and advisor on ancient technologies, activated additional displays showing the network of hidden facilities that had been discovered. Around Earth, we found 43 installations left by the original human civilization, Ben explained. Each one contains technology designed to monitor and defend against dimensional incursions. For 12,000 years, these systems protected not just Earth, but the entire galaxy, without anyone knowing they existed. The crystalline Velnari representative chimed with curiosity. Dr. Taylor, how many other species might have similar hidden defenses? That's what we're trying to find out, Ben replied. But so far, Earth appears to be unique, the original. Humans were the only species to survive a full-scale Void Hunter invasion and develop effective countermeasures. In the months since the rescue, Earth had become the center of a massive research effort. Scientists and engineers from dozens of species had come to study the ancient technology, while military officers learned new tactics for fighting enemies that existed partially outside normal reality. Sub-Commander Velthara, who had been promoted and assigned as permanent liaison between the Draconian Empire and Earth, stood to address the assembly. The Empire wishes to formally acknowledge that humans are not the primitive species we once believed them to be, she announced. Their ancestors were builders of wonders, and their descendants have inherited both their courage and their ingenuity. This was a remarkable statement coming from the proud Draconian Empire. For centuries, they had considered themselves the supreme military power in the galaxy. Now they were openly admitting that humans possessed capabilities they couldn't match. The Hivari representative buzzed nervously. What does this mean for the existing power structure of the galaxy? If humans have access to such advanced technology, how do we know they won't use it against other species? Amy smiled slightly. Because that's not who we are. The ancient humans had the power to conquer the galaxy, but instead they chose to hide and protect it. Modern humans have inherited that same instinct. We don't want to rule anyone. We just want to make sure everyone has a chance to survive. Admiral Carter stood up from the human delegation. 6 months ago, Earth had one colony world and a fleet that couldn't threaten a Draconian patrol ship. Today, we're offering to share our ancient technology with anyone willing to help defend the galaxy against future Void Hunter incursions. This announcement caused excited murmurs throughout the hall. The ancient human technology represented advances in energy generation, defensive systems, and dimensional science that were thousands of years ahead of current galactic standards. What do you want in return? Asked the gaseous Nethric representative. Partnership, Amy replied simply. The Void Hunters will return eventually. When they do, we need to be ready. That means sharing knowledge, coordinating defenses, and working together, instead of fighting each other. War Commander Thextal rose from his seat. The Draconian Empire, pledges its full support to this alliance. We have seen what the Void Hunters can do, and we have seen what humans can accomplish when properly motivated. Together, we will be stronger than either species could be alone. One by one, other representatives began standing to pledge their support. The Velnari offered their advanced crystalline computing technology. The Hivari promised to establish monitoring stations in the Outer Rim territories. Even smaller species that had never spoken in council sessions before stood to offer what help they could provide. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been promoted to command Earth's first interdimensional patrol ship, watched the proceedings from the observer section. His crew now included officers from 6 different species, all working together to explore the network of dimensional weak points that might allow future Void Hunter incursions. "It's amazing how much can change in 6 months," he said to Chief Engineer Nancy White, who sat beside him. "Amazing and terrifying," Nancy replied. "6 months ago, I was fixing broken engines on patrol ships. Now I'm building vessels that can travel between dimensions." "Do you ever miss the simple life?" Jake asked. Nancy thought about it for a moment. "Sometimes. But then I remember those draconian warriors trapped in those time loops. And I realize some things are more important than simple." Back on the main floor, Amy was concluding her presentation to the council. "The ancient humans left us more than just technology," she said. "They left us a responsibility. For 12,000 years, Earth's automated systems have protected this galaxy without anyone knowing. Now that the secret is out, we have a choice. We can continue to protect the galaxy together, or we can go back to fighting each other while the real enemy prepares for their next attack." The council speaker, the floating jellyfish-like Nethric, pulsed with different colors as it processed the discussion. "The Galactic Council recognizes Earth's claim to membership as a full partner species," it announced. "Furthermore, we authorize the formation of the Galactic Defense Initiative, with Earth and the Draconian Empire as co-leaders." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a previously unknown species had gone from primitive backwater to co-leader of galactic defense in less than a year. As the council session ended, Amy found herself surrounded by representatives wanting to discuss defense agreements and technology-sharing treaties. But she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd and excused herself. "Dr. Taylor," she called to Ben, who was packing up his presentation materials. "How does it feel to be the galaxy's expert on impossible things?" Ben laughed. "Overwhelming, mostly. A year ago, I was just digging through old ruins. Now I'm helping design ships that can survive in dimensions where math doesn't work properly." "Any regrets?" Amy asked. "Are you kidding? This is the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. We've proven that the universe is far stranger and more dangerous than anyone imagined, but also that cooperation between species can overcome seemingly impossible odds." Amy nodded, then looked out through the great windows of the council hall at the ships orbiting Kepler Prime. Human vessels flew alongside Draconian warships, Velnari crystal ships, and dozens of other designs. The sight would have been unthinkable a year ago. "The Guardian says the Void Hunters won't return for at least a generation," Amy said quietly. "That gives us time to prepare, to build proper defenses, to turn the galaxy into something they can't destroy." "And if we're wrong about the timeline?" Ben asked. Amy touched the ancient communication device she still carried, feeling the vast network of hidden installations responding to her presence. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations built by her ancestors continued their eternal watch, ready to sound the alarm if reality itself came under attack again. "Then we'll be ready anyway," she said with quiet confidence. Because that's what humans do. We adapt, we survive, and we protect the people we care about. It's who we've always been, even when we forgot our own history. As the various delegations prepared to return to their home worlds, plans were already being made for the greatest construction project in galactic history. Defensive stations would be built at key dimensional weak points. New ship designs would be created that could fight in any reality. Training programs would teach officers from all species how to recognize and combat threats that existed outside normal space. The galaxy had learned that it was not alone in the universe, and that the darkness between realities was filled with hungry things that wanted to devour all life. But it had also learned that when species worked together, when ancient wisdom was combined with modern courage, even